US election astrology 2024, RFK rising, Trump in trouble, and picking VPs. All of this in this episode. Let's go. Welcome, folks. This is Dr. V, and this is the channel where you get the astrology straight up, unvarnished, and unadulterated. Today, we're going to look at the evolving dynamics of the US elections. I did a previous video where I gave some predictions and prognoses for what's going to happen. I will link that below. But in this video, we're going to look at a couple of different and new angles, and especially we're going to look at the rise of Robert Kennedy Jr., RFK. He's come on the scene as a third independent candidate, and he's doing pretty well. And we're also going to look at the evolving issues around Trump, which are getting more serious by the day. And we're going to analyze all of that by looking at the astrology that gives us the actual dynamics and the energy behind the scenes, the archetypal energy, which is really the best way to understand what's going on from a big picture perspective. All right, so without further ado, let's look at RFK Jr. He obviously carries huge name recognition as a Kennedy, as carrying the Kennedy name and Kennedy legacy. He's come onto the scene recently in a big way with a couple of positions, controversial positions that he's taken, and he's been labeled a conspiracy theorist by mainstream media. All right, so let's look at his chart, and what we see here right away is that he's got this stellium here with Sun, Mercury, and Venus, and North Node, and Chiron as well. So whatever you have the North Node on in such tight conjunction, it's basically favored by destiny, by fate. It's favored for you to be active in that space, and you're going to be able to contribute something great and give back to the universe, to the world, to society at large on that point. And he's got the Venus and Chiron conjunct the North Node, so he's basically favored to bring some healing and some loving healing, love and healing into what he does. And what he does is take official positions in the discourses which he engages with the Sun and Mercury in Capricorn, where all of this is placed. And now this is part of a T square, as you can see here as well. So you've got Uranus and you've got Neptune. Neptune is squaring all of this, right? So Neptune is squaring the stellium, is squaring especially his Sun as well. So we can see here right away that you're going to be somebody who is going to get involved in stories around truth or falsehood of things, right? With the Sun in square to Neptune, right? If I just highlight this, Sun square Neptune, right? This is, well, if it's lived on a not yet very mature form, then this person is going to get entangled in a lot of falsehoods, right? Deceptions and falsehoods. But I don't think that's the case with RFK because, well, first of all, this stellium is so strong, right? With the Rahu in there, the North Node and Venus and everything. And you have here also the trine of Jupiter into Neptune, right? So Jupiter trine Neptune gives you this visionary quality, this ability to really see beyond the mundane and the everyday and understand like the how everything's connected on a big cosmic level, right? And with this constellation being the case, you have basically somebody who is born or is predestined to debunk and to stand up against false narratives and to be a revolutionary in doing that, right? With the Uranus in there too. So being a revolutionary and standing up to false narratives, right? This is written in his chart. It's very clearly written in his chart. So you had him go against a lot of stories that the mainstream is fabricating and is holding in place. You know, he was very critical of the mandated regimes which came into place after the pandemic, which went overboard and which were, it's already admitted now by officials that they were too extreme in some ways, that the cure was in many cases worse than the actual disease. And he's been speaking out against certain issues in foreign politics as well, where the U.S. is going against its own interests, really, by engaging in expansionist foreign policies abroad. So that being said, what are actually the chances of RFK to land anywhere reasonable in this upcoming election cycle? Is he just going to be somebody who, gets on podcasts and gets on the podcast train and does some damage there to existing narratives? Or is he actually somebody who has a chance to go further? So when we look at his transits that are coming up, I'm going to go here to the transits for the coming period. We see right away that this stellium that I talked about before, it's getting a trine here. You can see this coming into place, a trine from Jupiter and Uranus, right? So they're giving here a beautiful trine, and this is a very special constellation to have. So in this year, in 24, he's going to be very much favored for his thoughts and his words and actions to be heard, to receive a lot of attention, for him to grow. So you have Jupiter trine Mercury and trine Sun. This is your thoughts are received, your communications are received, and then you grow accordingly with that. And as that proceeds, you're also going to have the Uranus basically starting from sometime later this year, around summer, sometime around July, end of July, mid-July, August, July, sometime around that time, the Uranus is going to be as well trine the Sun, and it stays there for the rest of the year until election time, basically until November, right? And that's a very auspicious constellation to have because it stands for unexpectedly being catapulted into new positions, right? Unexpectedly having some surprise victories, basically, right? That's what Uranus trine Sun stands for, right? So having some surprise successes and gaining completely new social positions based on those surprise successes. So this bodes very well for him. What else? He's also got the Jupiter. You can see here, Jupiter, after going into Gemini, it moves all over to his natal Jupiter. And it's going to be there. You see here, it starts from August. Here you see that Jupiter is conjunct his natal Jupiter. So it's a Jupiter return, basically. And then, because of the retrograde motion, Jupiter stays there until the time of the election, actually goes to front and then comes back again and just stays there on Jupiter, right? So this is a several months of Jupiter conjunct Jupiter. Jupiter conjunct Jupiter stands for celebrating success, right? Celebrating successes, right? This is when you have the Jupiter return, which is prolonged in this case for several months. It just goes on and on, right? So these, put them together and you have some very promising, he's actually got more, there's more as well. He also has, Saturn is actually trine the natal Saturn. You see transiting Saturn here, trine natal Saturn for most of the year. So this means a time in which you are confronted with very positive karma. You don't face any negative karma in this phase. You just basically face positive karma in terms of the events and encounters that you have throughout this time, generally speaking. So put all of these together, put all of these indicators together, and he's got an incredibly strong chart for 2024 when it comes to advancing in politics. Now, does this mean that RFK is going to pull off a surprise win and just kind of completely unexpectedly come out and win the election? I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but I'm going to say he has a fighting chance. He has a fighting chance. His transits this year, they're phenomenally good. And starting from now all the way to November, it's just looking great. So he's going to perform really well this year in the remaining campaigns and the debates, and really gaining much more popularity, being thrust into the public consciousness, the collective consciousness as a real contender. All of that's definitely going to happen. Now, is he actually going to win? It's not something that we can say for sure, but he definitely has a fighting chance. Now, let's look at who, in my book, is still the front runner for winning this thing, which is Donald Trump. Now, if you look at my previous video where I did the outlook on the whole election cycle, you'll know that Trump, he has some very empowering transits coming up later this year, specifically around the election time. But that doesn't mean that it's all smooth sailing. Quite on the contrary, he's actually got a very, very difficult time right now, which is indicated here by Saturn going into square with his natal Uranus. You can see this here. So the transiting Saturn is squaring his natal Uranus. This is basically coming into aspect now in mid-April. It's starting, and then this is in aspect for most of summer. Actually, it's going out of aspect in June, and it comes back later, comes back again in August, right, in September. And this is basically, it's not a good omen when you're already fighting legal warfare or lawfare as the campaign that's being waged against him right now, because Saturn square Uranus, one of the potential interpretations is Saturn is restriction and limitation, right? Uranus is freedom. So Saturn square Uranus potentially could be restricting your freedom, being locked up or locked away, or in some ways being restricted in your freedom of movement, right? This is one possible interpretation. Now, is this going to happen? For that to be the case, you'd have to see multiple other indications in the chart. In astrology, you always want multiple hits. 3 hits, ideally, you want from progressions, from transits, from other factors, mundane factors, in order to be able to call an actual outcome as the most likely course of events. Now, this is not the case with Trump, because not only there isn't many other indicators that would point for him having to go to jail, as his opponents are obviously trying to make happen, but actually he has some other very relieving aspects at the same time as well. So in an article earlier this year, I actually predicted this when I said that with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that's happening at the end of April, that's happening throughout April already in Taurus, he is going to see some major windfall, some gains, or some benefits coming to him from technology, right? Why? Because this is a conjunction that stands for exuberant and enthusiastic innovation. It stands for markets going up and innovation happening everywhere, which is what we're seeing right now in AI and crypto and elsewhere. And it stands in a sextile to his Venus-Saturn, right? His Venus-Saturn is what? Is his wealth, right? Venus-Saturn is one of the main factors in his chart that stands for wealth, in addition with the Jupiter in the second house, right? And you've got this sextile here. So the innovation that's happening right now in the tech sector is going to positively impact him. And lo and behold, you already had this happen this month when his platform, Truth Social, it indicated that it's going to IPO. And this is a crazy good time, obviously, for an IPO when you look at it astrologically speaking. And his net value rose by $6 billion just because of Truth Social being so highly in demand on the stock markets. So obviously, this is not realized net worth yet. This is potential. But this already shows you how Donald Trump even though he's got these bad times coming and a lot of pressure from the legal side of things, on the other hand, he's got a lot of relieving factors as well, and there's a lot in the balance as well that speaks for him being able to actually expand and make moves and come out of this successfully. Now, the last thing I want to look at before wrapping this up for today is Trump's VP pick. A lot of different names have been mentioned, a lot of names have been thrown in the ring, metaphorically speaking, but who is actually going to be a good match for Trump? Obviously, the astrology allows us to understand the backgrounds and the synastries, the synergies between the different candidates in a way which just mere political analysis will never allow us to do. So why don't we use this and have a look and see how the different candidates relate with him. I'm going to first go through a couple of people who's been mentioned a lot, but who I don't really necessarily believe have much of a chance, but it's still interesting to look at. The first is Vivek Ramaswamy. So Vivek was very pro-Trump on the campaign trail for his own campaign, and he was almost basically campaigning for the VP spot. And if you look at their synastry, they have a really interesting synastry, really good synastry. So his Vivek here with his, outspoken, very media savvy, Leo, Sun, Mercury, and Mars, like he's a fighter and he speaks well and he likes to be seen and he likes to be in the limelight. And all of that is very nicely, in sextile to Trump's Sun. And the sextile here to Trump's Jupiter. It's very complementary, nicely complementary in a nice way. And they've got the Saturn, trine Saturn as well, which is really good for an intergenerational aspect, an older and a younger person. When there's Saturn to Saturn positively aspected, their kind of age difference is very easy and positive and empowering for both of them, right? The wisdom of the one and the energy of the other, and so on. So these two wouldn't even fight. They're just like a very positive, complementary synastry. But that being said, he's not bringing that much potentially to the ticket. Now, Tucker is another case that has been mentioned a lot. If we look at Tucker Carlson, the picture is very different with Tucker Carlson. So if we look at Tucker Carlson, we actually have here this, the synastry is really clear on this, where you have Trump's Mars in direct square to Tucker's Sun Moon conjunction here in Taurus. And Tucker's Mars is also in a wide opposition to Trump's Sun. So let me translate this for you from astrology to everyday language. These dudes are not going to like each other. They're going to fight, and they're rivals. They're rivals. They're hardcore rivals. It's written in their charts. They may temporarily have some type of alliances when it serves them, but the astrology is really clear. These guys are rivals, right? And you can see that in their past as well, when Tucker, he attacked Trump a few times here and there. And actually, when you look at Tucker's chart as well, Tucker has some, very positive, empowering transits coming up. I think it's more likely that Tucker eventually, not in 24, but afterward, is going to do his own run. He's going to do his own thing. He's not necessarily want to be any VP or second fiddle to anybody, but that's for the future to see. Now back to Trump. Trump has a few more people on the short list. At least those are the people that are being touted widely in the news. J.D. Vance is one. I'm not going to look at his chart, even though it's very, nice. He's got a really nice, very friendly synastry. Like they're going to like each other a lot. Another more interesting case though is Tulsi Gabbard. So Tulsi Gabbard, she's been a maverick between the parties. She has her own positions, and she's very outspoken. And with her, you've actually got an interesting case where there is some complementarities, here with her main stellium being and the sun being in sextile to Trump. So very complementary, very much adding to each other and adding new dimensions, really adding new voters as well for each other. But there is a caveat, and the caveat is that you've got here her Pluto in square to Trump's Saturn, right? So her Pluto is actually on Trump's Jupiter. So these guys, together they would have some really expansionistic drive. They would capture a lot of power, a lot of votes together. But long term, this partnership would break, and it would be at risk and at danger of getting into really difficult, troubling territory. So don't even just think like Mike Pence, but more like Chris Christie all over again. So that being said, who else remains? Who else is still on the list? Let's go to the next one. The one person that I still have here, and by some counts, he's actually a current front runner as well in the VP stakes at odds makers, and where you can bet on this. And this is Tim Scott. So Tim Scott, he's got actually an incredibly nice synastry. He's got this very interesting and beautiful Jupiter double whammy on Sun, which is one of the best things you can have in any partnership because it means blind trust, right? Just complete and blind trust and bigging each other up. This is like, I big you up, you big me up, right? Jupiter on Sun, both ways, and they have that in here, which is really nice to have. He also has here the Moon on Mercury, really getting how Trump speaks and what he's about. And a couple of other things as well, which are in here, which point to a very nice synastry. So astrologically speaking, Tim Scott is the best choice for Trump. If anybody in the Trump campaign is watching this, you're welcome, though they probably have their own astrologers. Now let me recap this. RFK, he has an incredible, phenomenal year ahead. He really looks poised to make some big moves this year. Is he actually going to emerge as a surprise winner, as a surprise president? I doubt it. He's probably too far away from everybody in the positions of power and so on to make that a reality, but he's definitely has a shot. And Trump, if he comes out of the next few months unscathed, which are going to be a little bit difficult, as we said, if he gets through that without taking too much damage, and if he makes the right choice on the VP, he is still the front runner, astrologically speaking, for taking this thing. Now, in the next videos, we're going to look at further aspects of the story as the story unfolds. Make sure to subscribe to this channel where you get all the astrology straight up, unvarnished and unadulterated on all the topics from current affairs to culture and existence and beyond. And if you want to see specific insights into politics or any other area, then let me know in the comments. I love to adjust my content based on what I hear from viewers. Let's have that conversation there. And until then, be well, be blessed, and all the best.